All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Flipping Junkie podcast. I'm excited today because we're going to be talking about investing in tax lien certificates and tax deeds, something I've personally never done. So I'm very interested to find out more from Ted Thomas, who's a best-selling author, publisher that's best known as America's Tax Lien Certificate and Tax Deed Authority. That's why I've got him on the show. And he's sat for more than 200 radio and TV interviews, most recently on ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, and has been recognized in Newsweek, USA Today, and the Wall Street Journal. So this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm really looking forward to finding out more about this exciting aspect of investing, one that I think a lot of, probably most investors don't take advantage of. And so I'm really interested to find out more. He's the go-to guy when people want to discover how to invest in secure government certificates that pay 16 to 18%. And his best-selling home study course is titled Quick Start to Buying Government Tax Lien Certificates and Tax Deeds. And it's considered to be the benchmark, basically, for standard for the tax lien certificate tax deed industry. And he also conducts live tours of tax lien certificate and tax deed auctions, which is very cool. But let's just get right into it. I want to welcome Ted to the show. Welcome, Ted.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Great. And thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to talk with us. I really do appreciate it. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's fun to kind of educate people, so we're going to have a lot of fun together. You can ask me any question you want and just get right down to nitty-gritties whenever you want.
Oh, awesome. Well, first, I always like to find out a little bit more about people's backgrounds, and
Okay.
wanted to find out how you got into the business of investing in tax liens and tax deeds, and then moved into teaching other people about it, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. My first career was as an airline pilot. As a matter of fact, I mentioned earlier that I flew for Aloha Airlines in Honolulu, Hawaii for a number of years, and then that's a good career, and it's a lot of fun, but it gets a little bit boring doing the same thing, up and down the airplane. So actually, the only reason I left the airlines was I found out how much money there was to be made in business, and so I said, oh, wait a minute, I want to be in business. So I resigned from the airlines, and I started a real estate business. And that was in California. I left Hawaii and I moved to California, and I bought a lot of apartment properties. Now, the smallest apartment I ever bought was a 50-unit apartment. And then we grew to 300, 250. We did a lot of that. In 1986, you can see I got a lot of gray hair here. And so in 1986, the markets reversed, just like they did in 2005 and 6. We had a red-hot market, and then it crashed, and we lost everything. At that point, we had $250 million in property. Lost everything. Oh, it was a real crash. And so at that point, I said, I'm going to become a conservative investor. I don't want to do this again. You put 25 years in, you don't want to lose all that money.
Yeah.
So sure enough, I started over, except this time I started out with tax lien certificates and tax defaulted properties. And so I found out if I could buy tax defaulted property for 10, 20 cents on the dollar, I had a lot better chance than those guys that were buying foreclosures or doing wheeling and dealing in the other parts of the market. So I've been in that business for the past 25 years, and so it's a
Well, how
business.
did you find out about that business? Was there somebody teaching at the time that aspect of it, and you stumbled upon their seminars, or how did you find out about it?
Well, I wish that was the case, because at that time we didn't have any computers to do it with then, and of course nobody was teaching it. It was kind of a hidden market. But I had heard a couple of guys that were doing it that were actually buying in Baltimore, Maryland. Now, where's Baltimore, Maryland, right? So Baltimore, Maryland, you could buy a tax certificate there, which is just a piece of paper, and you could earn 24%. I said, how could you earn 24%? It was like a 6% market in those days. And so I called Baltimore, and I got a woman on the phone, and I said, look, I'd like to buy these certificates. Can you tell me about it? And she said, sure. And so she told me about it, and then I said, well, can I get a list of them? And she said, I'll send you a catalog. Now, I didn't even believe a catalog. And she actually sent me a big book. It had 11,000 tax certificates I could buy just in Baltimore.
Wow.
Now, that was just one county. Now, there's 3,000 counties in the United States, over 3,000. And so every county either sells a tax lien certificate or a tax defaulted property, one or the other. And so so I started checking. Then I found out about New York, where they actually sell the property. Then I found about Texas. In Texas, they sell a certificate, and in one day you could earn 25%. One day. And I said, how could this be? And so obviously I got very excited about that. Now, if you hear a little noise in the background, I live in a house with a tile roof, and they're spraying the roof today to make sure it's nice and clean and always shiny and nice looking. Because
Yeah,
here in
I don't hear
Florida,
anything. So
okay, but if you do, well, it's just the noise they're making from that. That's all. Anyway, so that's how I got in it, and I've been in it ever since. And after I started telling friends about it, then you know what happened. Everybody wanted me to, oh, can you write me a little note about it? And then that became a book. And the first book I wrote was in 1988, and ended up in the bookstore and stayed there for 12 years in the
wow.
bookstore. So that was good. So
Which
that's a little bit longer than you wanted to hear, but
well, no. It's
that's
actually
all.
shorter than I
Yeah.
usually get.
Yeah.
What's the name of the book? So it's not in print anymore though.
No, that one's not in print anymore. I took the books out of the bookstore, not because I'm negative on education. It's if you're an author in a bookstore, you make about $1 a book. So that's not very good. So now I just create courses and video courses. We do a lot. Like right now, I'm talking into a camera that I'll be talking into tonight, and I have a class that I do. I've done for the past 6 years. It's a 2-hour class, and we broadcast it into Singapore. We broadcast it into Bangkok, all the provinces of Canada, because it's on the web, and it's a course we've been doing for a long, long time. We teach people all over the world how to do this now.
Awesome. So let's just get right into it for people then. So one thing you did touch on was the fact that some states have the tax lien certificates and some have the tax deeds. Can you
Right.
explain each one and maybe why certain states have one and not the other?
Right, exactly. Well, first of all, a tax lien certificate is nothing more than a piece of paper. So if a person has a property, let's say we'll use Florida for our example. Yeah, if a person doesn't pay their taxes, what the local government will do is they'll say, look, you haven't paid the taxes. We have a choice. We either can issue a tax certificate or we can take the house. So what they do, a very benevolent state is Florida, they issue a tax certificate. So anybody in the world can buy that certificate. Anybody can go to the list, buy the certificate, and pay the taxes on that property. Now, when they pay the taxes on that property, they now get a piece of paper. That piece of paper gives them rights in the property. Property can't be sold, it can't be mortgaged. Nothing can happen until the taxes are paid. So that makes that certificate for older investors a predictable, certain, secure investment. Predictable, certain, secure. So older people, and that doesn't mean young people shouldn't do it too. Older people really like that investment because they either get paid from the property owner so they can buy the certificate back. If they don't get paid, they get the property. It's one or the other. So it's a very safe, secure certificate. Now, half of the states sell those certificates.
Now, is it true that they take precedence over any other lien against the property? So even the first position mortgage, the tax, anything to pay the tax. I'm not sure. I've never done any of the tax investing, so I'm not.
Well, no,
exactly
you're right on
sure.
track. You're right on track. Everybody says the first lien. Actually, if you check a title report on any property, the first lien is always the taxes. But most people pay their taxes, so that everybody says it's the mortgage is the first. But the mortgage or the deed of trust is really the second lien on the property. The first lien on the property is the property tax lien. It takes precedence over an IRS lien. An IRS lien is a junior lien. A tax certificate always number one. A mortgage or a deed of trust is always number 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, nice. So that makes it even more a little bit more powerful.
Secure.
Then. Yeah,
It's secure.
Yeah.
It has the power. The government at the local level has the power and can control the property. All right. So we learned a little bit about tax certificates. About half of the states sell what's called a tax deed. Now, a tax deed means that the property's gone into default, same as the other one did, except now the government is not so benevolent. The government says, look, we're going to take your property. So let's use California as our other example. So in California, what they will do is they will take the property. In other words, if you're going to visualize, they're going to seize the property. They're going to take it away from the owner. They're going to throw the owner out of the property in most cases. They'll take the owner out, and then they will sell that property. And the reason people like that investment, the starting bid on those properties is the back taxes. So the government doesn't try to make money on the deal. They just want to get rid of the property and get it back on the tax roll. So those properties will start at back taxes. Now, there's all kinds of extremes. Go to a place like Miami, they'll have 65 to 85,000 tax lien certificates every year. 65,000 property owners didn't pay just in Dade County. All right, now let's go to Los Angeles County. Los Angeles County, they sell the tax defaulted property. I send my students to auction, then we teach them how to buy there. I've never seen less than 1,000 properties in Los Angeles County, but usually it's 15 or 1,800 property with starting bids of just the back taxes.
Nice. So when you're looking at these, when you're looking at, with that many different properties facing that issue, and you go to these auctions to do this, how do you determine which ones? What's your process for buying these? How are you teaching people to go in and get the pick out the ones that they should be bidding on?
Well, there's dozens of ways. Now, in the old days, pre 10 years ago, everything, you had to go there. You had to go to the county to get the list. Then you had to drive around and check all the properties. Now, because the computer systems are coming on rapidly, the past 2 years more have come on than in the 20 years before. They're coming on rapidly. These counties are coming online, and you can actually subscribe to the county, and they will send you an auction list. If I showed you one I have here on the desk, but to give a person a visual that's just a listener, a book from Los Angeles with the properties in it would be the same size as a telephone book for like Cleveland or Boston. It would be about 2 or 3 inches thick.
Wow.
Okay, but you can get that online and look at it, scroll it through that. So you can locate every property that way. You can also subscribe to systems like we have systems. We have every county in the United States in a system. And then what we can do is we can go on to, as you already know, Google has maps, Zillow does a lot of that stuff. But the satellite system, the GIS mapping systems that the government has will take you right down. You can tell where there's a geranium on the front porch.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do the research, which is very much a part of the business now. It wasn't a research business before. Before, it was, when I started, it was a business, go look at the property. What's my gut feel? It needs a roof, it needs this, it needs that. The old traditional real estate stuff. So you still use that, but you can do a good 90% of the work online now, whereas you couldn't do that before.
Right, and these houses are mostly occupied, so you wouldn't be able to get into them and see inside anyway, right? You're only being able to look at the exterior.
Right, only the exterior. And some counties now, like I happen to buy in New York State. I do a lot, even though I live in Florida, I buy in New York State. Some of those counties have now made arrangements with local auction companies, and they open the house up one day before the auction. People can go in and look, and they'll have like I attended an auction 2 weeks ago. I bought 2 properties, and they had 330 properties that they're auctioning in one county. 330. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. So with people in those cases, I guess, people are going inside because they're really kind of fine tuning and getting down to the most that they can pay based on what's needed. Whereas if you just go outside, you have to assume the inside needs more than maybe it needs, so that you don't end up losing out. But do you have any formulas for determining what you're willing to bid on these properties?
Well, I have to teach one thing, but sometimes I do something a little different myself. So I'm teaching people, I teach them to be conservative investors. I don't want them to lose money. So I do 2 things. First thing I do, and it's not commonplace, is I say, start out with buying vacant residential land. I want you to buy vacant residential land because I want you to be conservative. Other bidders will not bid on it. They don't know anything about residential land, so they won't bid on it. But you can easily figure out a value. If you've got a house at the end of the street and another house in the middle of the street, and there's a vacant land between it, those houses both have value, so the land has value. So now you can figure out what that. But the average bidder, the average person coming in the business, wants to make a killing. Everybody wants to make a killing. All right, and I get it. Now, there's a place to make a killing. It's all on the high end right now. It's not on the low end. Because every television channel that you can look at has got a course on flippers right now. Okay, so everybody thinks that you're going to flip and get rich. And I don't know. I look at some of those guys rebuilding those houses. They put in a lot more money than I ever put, but you got the point. All right, so you got residential land. So now there's nothing can go wrong. So I can teach someone in Canada or Bangkok or Australia, buy that residential land. What's going to happen to it? Is it going to burn? I mean, so what? The land is still there. So you're not going to have a high-risk situation. All right. So I buy those. They all have a tax value, so you know what the value is. When they sell at auction, they sell for 10, 20 cents on the dollar. I'm answering your question the long way, but if you send 20 cents on the dollar, can you sell it for 50 cents and be happy? Well, of course you can. Now, did I make you rich by Friday? I'm sorry, it's Thursday and I can't get you rich by Friday, but I've got a system now that'll work. Now, do you want to grow that system? Yes, and we can start buying houses. So I'm going to be remember, I'm the guy that lost millions of dollars. I mean, I had $200 million in real estate, lost it all, everything. went $2 million in the hole. So I'm going to be conservative. Now, this other
Right.
guy's going to say, the other guys are going to strap on their 6 guns and say, let's go to the auction. They're gunslingers. I'm just a very conservative investor. I buy houses, but I want to try to get them 20 or 30 cents on the dollar. Now compare that with a foreclosure market or a bank repo market. I'm way under those guys. So who do I want to sell to? That's who I want to sell to. If I can, I want to sell it to the fixer-upper guy.
Nice, right. So basically you're wholesaling those properties
If I can.
over to,
If I can.
right? So,
I always can't do that, though. I always can't. So I have to be prepared to fix them up, too.
right. Okay, so why do you think it is that the numbers and the deals are different between the tax liens, the tax deeds versus foreclosures? Why do you think it is different that there's not as many people going after them?
It's just an educational process, but don't think that there's not a lot of people. It just there's plenty of competition in both markets, but foreclosure is so well known. Now, I've written books about foreclosure, and they've been bestsellers. And there's nothing wrong with the foreclosure market, but you're going to have to pay in the foreclosure market today somewhere between 50 and 70. Some people I understand pay more than that, 50 and 70% to make a profit. We're going to try to buy at 20 and 30 cents and then make our profit from there. So that's what the big difference is. And it's just a matter of learning it. There'll never be in your life or mine, and you're considerably younger than me, your life or mine, there'll never be a shortage. Because in the United States, there's 100 million properties. Between 2 and 3% will go into tax default every year. Now, 2 or 3% of 100 million is 20 million. I mean, it's 2 million, 2 to 3 million. So you got 2 or 3 million properties that are going to come up every year into default. So there's plenty for everybody. You're never going to find a shortage. It's always going to be there.
So do you find that most people, like you said, that one auction for that one county, it was 300 something properties.
Right.
Obviously, I mean, do you think, how do you narrow down which ones you're looking at bidding on?
All right. The business, you make your money in the business buying it, but you better have a market to sell it. So there's every city you can find a part of the city that's not very good. What people do is they think they're going to buy a junker and suddenly make it into a palace. That's not going to happen. So I tell people, find where there are good neighborhoods. Buy the neighborhood, don't buy the house. Buy the neighborhood first because you can fix the house. Even if you had to bulldoze it and put a modular, or you bulldoze it and rebuilt it. So buy the neighborhoods first. So just slow down and find those. So there's parts of the country that are there's always a part of the country going through an economic upheaval. So past 10 years, Phoenix has been upside down, to use an example. But Phoenix in the last 18 months has come back by like 50%. Now, my number is probably inexact, but, they really come soaring back,
Wow.
right? All right. And Phoenix will always be good long term. But short term, they overbuild. They massively overbuild Phoenix, and then it goes into a slump. Then they come back and do that. Las Vegas is the same kind of market. So you'll find that wherever you can. So you want to come to the East Coast, you're going to find the same kind of thing in a Miami or a Fort Lauderdale or a Jacksonville. They'll overbuild, and then they'll come back. All right. So you need to just think a little bit about market timing. That's what a person needs to think. The way investing is depicted on television is you go in there, start tearing walls down, you put roofs on, you fix this, and you're rich in 2 weeks. You're not rich in 2 weeks because you've got all your money sunk in that house, and you're going to have to wait until you get it sold before you can do the next one. So it's not easy. It's not easy.
Right. Yeah, we teach to be pretty conservative as well, and you do make your money on the buy. So to make sure that you build in enough room for profit and mistakes to where you still have some profit when you make those mistakes, because everybody will and does make mistakes. But so I think we're okay on there. But but you personally, like whenever you were looking for the ones that so you buying all over the country, you weren't really focused in your backyard. You were buying more. How were you even determining which markets you were interested in buying these in?
I've been doing the same thing for 25 years. Everybody knows where I am, so they're at the sale.
Yeah.
I meet them there, right? I did a 3-day event in Phoenix, and all of a sudden I got all these guys in my backyard and
Yeah.
whatever. So wherever Ted goes, they're going to go. So I don't tell anybody where I'm going for until I bought there a few times. But there's plenty of markets to look at. So what I look at is what is the economy of that area, what is the reputation of that area, and once I've got that, and I say, all right, what can I do for the future here? What's available? So I'll get all the auction information. Let's use New York again, because that's 1,500 miles from where I'm talking right now. I will get many different counties. So there's going to be like 60 counties in New York. So I say, well, wait a minute. Do I want to get involved in farm properties where we're open land, or do I want to get stuff that within 100 miles of the city? Because people there will commute for long distances. So I find places that there'll be a lot at the auction. Like I just told you, the auction I went to had 300. The same auction last year had 550. So there's an abundance there. So now I know if I go to the auction, you might be there. And I recognize that fact. Okay. But once you've used up your quarter or $500,000 or whatever it is you've got, then, okay, now there's going to be some for me. And so I'm a patient investor. Okay, now what can happen to the other one? The last auction I went to was 2 days. Now the first day, nobody was bidding. So I got both of my properties before 11 o'clock in the morning. And I stayed all the way until 5, and then they had an auction all the next day. Now the next day, all the properties went for 40, 50, 60 cents on the dollar. So everybody showed up the second day. Don't ask me why. But you just have to be a patient investor. And I did that sitting at my desk here in Florida. I did the whole thing online.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So what is the process then for registering for the auction, and you have to show proof of funds or anything? I mean, how does the whole process work for bidding in these auctions?
I'm really glad to hear you say that, because you said proof of funds. So you've been going to foreclosure sales, and you do have to do. Believe it or not, at the tax sale, they don't ask for proof of funds. I'm shocked. Okay, but now that you know that, it tells me you're a sophisticated investor. So here's a strategy for you. Go to the auction, register for the auction, have your funds available, and they're going to require you make deposits, okay, or something like that. All right, watch the auction. What they will do at a tax auction is they will sell the property. If the money isn't there, in other words, it's not coming through on a credit card, or it's not the money isn't moving to the auctioneer immediately. If it's not immediate, they'll re-auction the property within minutes.
Wow.
Within minutes. Okay. Now, if you made that bid, I can tell you right now, the sheriff is coming to get you. If you made the bid and you don't produce, the sheriff will be there. If you're at the auction, they will physically pick you up if they have to, and 2 sheriffs will exit. You'll make an exit, and you'll never be able to go back.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, they're serious about it. Because
So
guys they tried to scam the auction. You're not going to scam them. If you try to scam them, you better plan on you're going to have a visitor, guaranteed. Yeah.
So do you have any strategies for people, that maybe don't have that amount of cash? But like you said, you're finding some things at 20 to 30, 40% cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, do you teach any kind of investing strategies where you partner up with people or anything like that?
In the old days, you used to do a lot of partnerships, but you're a real estate guy, so you understand this. Let's say you did a fixer-upper. You get it all fixed, and then you show them a picture. We've got it all fixed. Now we're going to put it on the market, and they expect it's going to be sold at, it's like television. 30 minutes later, it's going to be sold. You might take 3 months to get it sold, right? And they call you every day. I don't need all that. I got enough money, and I live in a paid-for house and paid-for cars and stuff. I don't want them anymore. They call me. I say no.
Yeah.
But
so
here's
it's doable, but you've got headaches to deal with.
Well, I think anybody can learn real estate and do an admirable job and make a good living for the future. I think what people have trouble with is when people start saying, why isn't it done? Why isn't it? They're constantly questioning you. And real estate investor in the world, you could be the Warren Buffett of real estate, but you can't tell me when that property's going to sell.
Right.
You just can't tell me. I mean, the market just is the market. And some days the market is, we had 4 investors today who wanted the property, and tomorrow nobody will even talk to you. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. Here's what the small guy can do. I bought 2 properties last week to give you the perfect example. One property had a value, round numbers, 200,000. I paid 40.
Nice.
Okay. Now the other one came up, surprisingly, a few minutes later. The other one was a mountain cabin surrounded by pine trees. Okay, looked good. It's a little cabin. The value was only 45,000. The auctioneer couldn't get a bid. He couldn't get a bid. So I pushed the button at 5,000. Sold.
Nice.
So I paid $5,000. Now, that isn't probably the best investment I ever made, because what am I going to sell it for? Probably sell it for 20 or 25. I mean, it's a month's pay, yes, but so you don't know. But if you have money and you did your homework, you're going to make some money in real estate. If you don't do your homework and you're not prepared, I'm sure you teach the same thing. You got to be prepared.
Right. So what the difference again with the tax lien certificates and tax deeds? Now the tax certificates. Now when we're talking about these auctions, we're talking about the deeds, right?
Yeah.
And then for the tax lien certificates, what happens when the homeowner doesn't pay?
Okay. So let's take a state that sells tax lien certificates like Arizona. So in Arizona, they will have, let's take Maricopa County, that's Phoenix. Now, Phoenix will have a low of 20,000 certificates to a high of 40,000 every year. Okay, previous 10 years ago, they weren't online. Now they're online. So they'll put the certificate number up there, or they'll put pages of up there, and people can bid on the certificate. Now, a certificate in Phoenix, the most it will pay is 16%. Every bid after that will be less. 15.5, 15, 14.5, it will go down. All right. You get a non-sophisticated investor. That investor is going to jump in there and try to bid 16. Someone's going to go to 14. That could bid. Those certificates are now being bid down to 3 and 5%, and in some cases lower. So, but in a 1% market, 5% is pretty good. 1% market. Okay. There are ways, and it's too complex to do on this short call that we have. There are ways there will be leftovers, and they'll buy the leftover certificates. So I teach people, I'll show you how to get that 16% every time, or the 18%, whatever it is in that state. All right. So those certificates are safe and secure. That's the beauty of the certificate. All right. Most of the people that come into the business, if they're older, if they're 45 to 65, they're looking at those certificates pretty close for an IRA or a 401k. And they know they're going to get paid. They're feeling real good. Not a lot of work to do. The other side of it, the younger guys coming in, they're really eager beavers. They want property. So they're a lot more aggressive investors. Okay. Getting those people to be conservative is somewhat of a challenge, because everybody just thinks they're going to get rich instantly, and it's not that kind of business.
Yeah. So what is the strategy for them then? Because I guess what you mean is they're going to bid for the lower rates to be able to pick up more of these certificates. And then what is their strategy at that point?
There's two strategies taking place here. One, they're a conservative investor. They just want to protect their money. Mm-hmm. So if they're buying 3 and 5% certificates, they're happy with that. They're happy with that kind of return. They know they don't have to worry about it. They know they're going to get paid from the government, and they know they can buy as many as they want. So you'll see like a hedge fund will come in and buy 10,000 certificates. Really bad mistake. Really bad mistake. No, it is, because what happens to the ones that don't pay? What's the hedge fund going to do with the property? It's a negative on their balance sheet. It's a negative. All right. So they will have to form another company to spin those off to, and then they'll sell that company. They'll spin them off. All right. So but the person that's buying tax certificate is more than likely a conservative. Now, if they're a young guy, they're really willing to do the work, what they can do is they can find out about the leftover market. And the leftover market is another whole market, which they can buy those certificates, and you buy it over the counter. You're not in a bidding situation. That can be an aggressive market with high returns. Now keep in mind, we talked about 16. Florida, it's 18. If you buy in Texas, you can make 25%. So there's huge numbers to work with.
And so what happens if you buy this certificate and then the homeowner fails to make the payments on the tax lien certificate? What happens typically with those?
Okay, let's use Arizona so we don't confuse people. In Arizona, you buy the certificate for this year, but the certificate can come up again next year. So Arizona will allow them 3 years of defaults. 3 years of defaults. At the end of the 3 years, you can just do the foreclosure yourself, or you can hire an attorney for $750, and they'll go. Foreclosure is nothing more than paperwork. It's not like you have to go remove people from property or anything like that. You send notices, and then you take over the property. It's all done. Actually, you can go on websites and see how to do the foreclosure nowadays.
Okay, so they do. There is a way where you might have a point where you're not receiving these payments, and it could be something that's dragged out over 3 years. Then, just depends
Excellent.
on the different.
That was a good question. First of all, you're not going to get payments. What you're going to do is you're going to buy a certificate. No money will come back to you until the people pay the tax. No money comes back because the people have to pay the tax for the government to have the money to pay you. All right, so if the people pay the tax, then what they're going to do is they're going to pay the local government, the county. The county will say, send the certificate. So you just send them the certificate, then you get your check.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then what about, what is it called, right of rescission or is there something, I know California or something, there was even movies about it, where people have the right to pay something like, I don't know if that's with the tax deeds or what, but where they have the right to pay off the after they lose it, they even have the right to be able to pay it off with an interest rate, a high interest rate, to get the property back. Is that?
That's really not anything that's commonplace. Let me give you 2 examples of that. And first of all, in California, when you go to the auction, when the gavel comes down and it hits the table, you own the property, and there is no right of rescission. There is no right. You have lost your right as of that minute. Within 90 days, you'll have a deed in your hand. Okay, you'll have the deed, and no one's taking that baby away from you. You're going to own that property. You better get insurance on it. You better make sure it's cleaned up. You better expect the guy's going to show up and say, you haven't cleaned up the yard. You got it cleaned up, or that, if you got violations, it's your property. All right. But right of rescission, let's use Texas to use the example. In Texas, they auction what they call tax deeds. Okay, now that deed is a redeemable deed. I didn't say rescission, I said redeemable. So what happens is I buy the property in Texas, they give me a deed to the property. I take it home. I just put it on my desk. I don't do anything. All right, I leave the people in it and do whatever. Okay, anytime in 180 days, that property owner can come back and pay 100% of what I paid plus a 25% penalty, and then they get it back. Okay, so really a tax deed in Texas is just like having a tax lien. It's redeemable. Okay?
Okay, yeah, that was the question I had. So,
yeah.
So you've got to wait before you really want to do too much.
Well, if you do anything on a property there's 5 redeemable states like that. Rhode Island's one, and the other 2 don't come in. Georgia's another one. Anyway, if you do anything on the property, keep records of what you're doing. Like if you had to go fix the roof, if you had to, you had a leaky faucet and it flooded the kitchen, whatever you do, take care of what needs to be taken care of. But keep records of what you're doing, and that will be that will have to be paid to you also.
Oh, okay. So anything you spend would also for improvements.
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay.
Right. But in Texas, as you know, you drive around, those pickup trucks got guns in the back window. So don't go kicking anybody out of properties. Not a good idea.
Yeah, we're a little bit more careful here. Yeah, and then I noticed, for years I've noticed, when buying properties, because we do market directly to sellers to sell their properties to us that we then fix and flip. And I have noticed over the years, there have been times where I've noticed that people had loans for their taxes. People and people get all this direct mail from these businesses and companies that want to loan people money to pay their taxes with.
Right.
And so those loans that these other companies are making to people, this is before they default, right? Because it's like, well, they owe the money, but it's not defaulted yet. And so they want to loan them this money. Are those loans then also in a better position than any other loan on the property because that was a loan for their property taxes?
No, they're not in a better position. First of all, the first lien is always going to be the taxes. The subsequent liens are going to be whatever they are. For example, if there's a first mortgage, a second mortgage, and an IRS, then whoever comes after that, they could put they're lien, but they're just they're in
Oh,
sequence.
the fact that it was paid for property taxes though doesn't have any bearing on it. It was just a loan to them. They could have
They don't
spent
get
that. Okay.
They don't get a preference. No,
Okay.
there's no preference. It's always in the order of who was first, and there's no way you're going to get in front of the county, because the county, the day they draw the map, they give it a tax number. That day, that property is now has a number, and it's first in time is first in place.
Okay, so just loaning somebody money to then pay their taxes is not going to give you the same benefit as if you had bought that lien from the
It's
county.
high risk investment.
Right.
High
Okay.
risk. No doubt. Yeah.
Huh, that's interesting. I never knew if that was how
Right.
it worked. And I never bothered to really look into it, but we don't really focus on all of those things. But after talking to you, I think I want to do a little bit more research and maybe get into your training and see if we can find out how to take advantage of maybe.
Well,
now.
you're in a good area, because you'll find there'll be. See, the beauty of Texas is, if you go to the auction, you raise your hand up in the air and you bid. If you get that certificate, you're going to either make 25% on your money, which is what's wrong with that. How many deals have you made you didn't make 25% on, right? Okay, so you're either going to get 25% or you're going to get the property. Now, how bad can that be? So I'm a big advocate. As a matter of fact, we just had 9 couples go through the auction in Dallas, and what's the one right south of it? Franklin and Collin counties. Okay, those are all right around Dallas. Okay, so you're in an area where you're going to find 25. Here's the beauty of Texas. You're going to find every county, there's 250 of them, have an auction the first Tuesday of the month every month. How good is that?
Yeah, that's nice. But so what are some mistakes that you've seen newer investors make? Is there anything that maybe you can talk about that maybe people should avoid, that are common things that you see people having trouble with or making mistakes or anything like that?
This isn't going to apply to you because you're a professional, but it applies to your student, because let's say you buy a property and you fix it and you basically call it a flipper and move it and you make a nice profit. Okay. You deserved all that because of your knowledge. You deserved all that because of the investment you made. All right. So the investor, this is the big mistake they all make. That doesn't look hard. Like you really don't look like you've been working very hard to me. You've just been kind of laid back and easy. That's how the investor thinks of you. Okay. So, however, here's what the investor does. They think because they went through one class that they're ready to go, and they're going to start bidding. All right. So if you do this offline, you'll notice there's one set of people in the room, and that's the place to be if you can. Then you'll notice online the bidding goes higher. And so the big mistake is they haven't looked at property. Now, when you look at a property, you have a critical eye. You can see a crack. You can see a bad roof. You can see where the hail's been hitting that roof. You can see the foundation is slanting. You can see that there's a water problem. You can't see any of that online. And so they bid these things high. So I told you a few minutes ago, and they'll just back up what I'm saying. So the second day of the auction, I could see some new bidders came, and I saw some new names coming up on the screen. And I couldn't believe some of these people were bidding 60, 70%, and they were bidding against each other on the internet. They were bidding. Who do you know you're bidding against? You don't know. And the mistake people make is they pay too much. It's the same as your business and doing flippers. There's another guy that'll pay $350, and you say, I won't pay a dime over $225 for that. Because you see something, but they don't. So on the internet, those guys get themselves in trouble. Now, the county does not mind at all.
Oh, yeah. That's what they want.
Nice. Just bid it up. We're going to keep the money. They're going to have a grand old time. So the biggest mistake is people pay too much. And despite how good you are or how good I am, I don't make every deal perfect. I don't do it. There's ones I get in there and oh my God, we're going to have to spend 60 grand on this house. I thought we we're going to have to spend 25. I've done it. And anybody that says they hadn't is just making a story up. Yeah. So you get the idea.
Yeah, it happens. That's why you always have to be conservative and never start having that logic enter your brain that, I can do the rehab cheaper, and so maybe I can bid up more and do that kind of thing. So when you were talking about online versus in person, and they were bidding against each other and they didn't know who they're bidding against, sort of like two new people who don't know what they're doing, bidding against each other, thinking, well, that person must see the value in it because they keep bidding it up. but they're both doing it against each other. Whereas in person, if you've been going to the auction long enough that you see who kind of has been in the business for a long time, who knows what they're doing, and you see them bidding it, then that's where you kind of say, well, this guy knows what he's doing, and it's not somebody that's new here. Is that what you meant by that?
Yeah, that was a good analysis. I think you would have a sense for it, and I would have a sense for it. When a guy says 33,000, another guy said 33,000. They're two different people, and the guy that knows what he's doing is going to be strong in the room. He's going to stand up. He's probably not hiding at the back table. He's probably sitting up there. He's got his bidder's card. He's ready to go. He came there for a reason. And if you didn't know, why not go to 2 or 3 auctions and learn that? Just learn that one thing, but you can't do that online. And so I told you I bought online, but I've got to tell you, before I bought online, I went to New York and I visited all the properties I wanted to bid on. And I looked at 40 properties. I have pictures of them, and I sat. Now I'm looking at you right now on a screen. In front of me is the screen. To my right is a big iPad, the big one. And I've got a picture of every property I'm going to bid on. Now they're showing me a picture of the property, but I've got my own. I got my own, and I've got Zillow said this, somebody else said that, but this is the value. And I'm looking at 3 different screens in front of me while I'm bidding online, because I'm just watching what's going to happen. Now, I only bought 2 of the 300. Now, I had money to buy more than that, but there's another auction. There's going to be 5,000.
And I'm glad you said that, because it's like you had mentioned before. People hear about, I got online, I did this auction online and bought 2 properties. But the part they don't hear is all the legwork behind the purchase of those 2 properties. Even though it was bought online, there was a lot of legwork, a lot of research, a lot of studying, analysis, and work that goes into it. And we all do it. It's not, and like you said, where people hear us talking about flipping houses and they see the TV shows. There's so much more. It's not an overnight success. It took time to learn all of this and make mistakes, and that's why training is so important. Especially from people that have done it, like yourself, for so many years. But is there anything else that you want to share before we end this interview?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on. I hope we educated people a little bit. And if any of your people would like to work with us, they can contact you, and we can reconnect and find a way to help them. We do everything from just basic classes. Obviously, everybody's got stuff on the internet, but you're not going to get rich on the internet. You're going to have to get. Biggest thing I could tell anybody: get a mentor, get a coach, get someone to help you. Put 10 grand into the deal, whatever it takes to learn how to do it right, and then go with those people that know what they're talking about. This is not a business for amateurs. Unfortunately, a lot of people come in as an amateur, and they lose a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so people can find you on your website at tedthomas.com. Is that right?
Right. tedthomas.com. That's right.
And I'll have that on the show notes page. If you didn't have a chance to write that down or anything, if you remember flippingjunkie.com/81, we'll have the show notes with the key points from this episode along with that link to tedthomas.com for Ted Thomas. So should be pretty easy to remember for that one, though. He's got a good domain name with his own name on it. But thanks again for taking the time to share with us today.
Good to talk with you. Good luck.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again.